Act 1 of The 13th Chair by Bayard Veiller. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Narrator read by Jennifer Fournier.
Mr. Roscoe Crosby, read by Mike Harris.
William Crosby, read by Adrian Stroers.
Edward Wales, read by David Olson.
Bradish Trent, read by Charlotte Duckett.
Howard Standish, read by Algie Pug.
Philip Mason, read by John Burlinson.
Pollock, read by Dylan McFarlane.
Inspector Donahue, read by Todd.
Sergeant Dunn, read by Abai.
Doolin, read by David Purdy.
Helen O'Neill, read by Beth Thomas.
Mrs. Crosby, read by Bev Stevens.
Miss Eastwood, read by Sam W.
Mrs. Trent, read by Amy Graymore.
Policeman, read by Joseph Tabler.
Miss Elizabeth Erskine, read by Lydia.
Grace Standish, read by Sonia.
Madame Rosalie Lagrange, read by Christine G.
The 13th Chair, Act 1. The scene is the Italian room in Roscoe Crosby's home in New York. It is a handsome room. As the curtain rises, Miss Helen O'Neill and William Crosby are discovered standing right center. They are in each other's arms, and the rising curtain discloses them as they kiss. The window blinds are drawn.
I love you so.
You are the most wonderful thing in the world.
I can't believe it.
That I love you.
Oh no, I'm sure of that.
If there's any doubt in your mind, I'll prove it again.
They'll see us.
He takes her in his arms again and kisses her. She laughs happily, and then, turning a little, stands with her cheek pressed against his.
Oh, my dear, my dear.
Mrs. Crosby, a fashionably dressed and extremely attractive woman, enters from door down left. She closes the door. She stops for a moment and watches the lovers, and then, with a little laugh, comes toward them. Mrs. Crosby is 55, and looks 10 years younger. She has charm, beauty, and kindliness.
Don't move. You look so comfortable. Well, are you happy?
Oh, Mother.
Happy.
Mrs. Crosby crosses to Helen, pats her hand, and stands between William and Helen.
Shall we tell them all?
Tell them? What do you think they are? Blind and deaf? It's been a perfectly wonderful dinner. You were so blind to everything but each other. Oh, Billy, I thought your father would have a fit.
I thought he had an awful cold. He was coughing terribly.
Coughing? He nearly choked to keep from laughing. I told him I'd send him from the table if he laughed at you.
Why, you never spoke to him once.
Child, explain to him that wives don't have to... Oh, I forget you haven't learned that yet. You know, Billy, I can talk to your father very effectively without words.
Mrs. Crosby.
Mother, Nell's all fussed up because we've got money. She thinks you'll think I'm, what in the novels they call, marrying beneath me.
Helen looks a little hurt.
Well, he is.
Nonsense, child. Don't be silly.
It's not silly, Mrs. Crosby. Everyone will say it, and they'll be right.
Let's settle this thing now once and for all, then. In the first place, it's all nonsense, and in the second, it isn't true.
Oh, yes, it is.
Oh, the first row. I'll settle this one. Nellie?
Now then, Nell, out with it. Get it all out of your system.
In the first place, it's the money.
Yes, but... Helen...
Please, let me say it all. You have social position, great wealth, charming friends, everything that makes life worth... Oh, what's the use? You know as well as I do the great difference between us, and...
My dear child, suppose we admit all that. What then?
But don't you see?
William, embracing her.
You little idiot. I don't see anything but you.
You love each other. That's the whole of it, children. Suppose you listen to an old woman.
Old, huh?
Well, Old enough. If Billy was the usual rich man's son, it might be different. There might be something in what you say. But thank God he isn't. Mind you, I don't say he wasn't like most of them when he was younger. I dare say he was. I know he went to supper with a chorus girl once.
Twice.
What was she like?
Like a chorus girl.
The trouble with you, my dear, is that you've been reading novels. When Billy's father married me, I was a school teacher, and he was a clerk. We didn't have any money, but we were awfully in love. We still rather like each other. Now, just for the sake of argument, suppose we should have acted like stern parents. What would be the use? Billy's in business for himself. He's making his own money. He can marry when he wants to and as he wants to. And if you want my real opinion, I don't mind confessing that I think he's pretty lucky to get you.
There.
But you know so little about me.
Oh, rot.
Thank you, Billy. I was trying to think of an effective word.
To Helen.
You've been my private secretary for over a year, and no matter how much my looks belie it, I'm not a bit of a fool. I know a great deal about you.
My family.
I'm not marrying your family.
I'm afraid you are.
Oh.
There's only Mother.
Oh, my dear, forgive me. Your mother should have been here tonight.
No, my mother, Mrs. Crosby. Mother doesn't go out. She'd be unhappy here, and you'd be uncomfortable if she came. You'll find her trying sometimes. You'll think she's common. Oh, don't misunderstand me. She's the most wonderful mother in the world, and she's—
Suppose, my dear, that we take your mother for granted. Take us as you find us, and we will try to be happy.
Enter Crosby from door left. He is a fine-looking man of about 60, with a pleasant personality, a good deal of charm, and that masterful self-possession which sometimes marks the man of affairs. It is always evident that the most delightful intimacy exists between himself and his wife.
Well, Roscoe?
Welcome, Helen, my dear.
Helen crosses to him, and he takes her in his arms.
Oh, Mr. Crosby,
Crosby, with arms still around her, reaching his other hand to William.
Bill, shake.
Father and son shake hands. Crosby looks at his wife.
Shall I tell them?
I would.
Tell us what?
You did this just in time. Tomorrow I was going to forbid you to have anything more to do with this young woman.
You see?
What for?
Your mother and I felt you were pretty slow with your love-making.
Oh, Mother.
And I knew darned well that if I interfered, you'd take the girl out and marry her.
Oh.
You old schemer.
I bet it would have worked.
As Crosby crosses, William slaps him on the back.
It would.
The door down left opens, and Edward Wales enters.
I came ahead of the others to tell you—
Why, Ned, old man, you came just in time to congratulate them.
He points toward William and Helen.
On what?
They're going to be married. Isn't it fine?
Oh.
You don't congratulate us, Mr. Wales.
No, Will, I don't. I'm not sure that I can.
Why, Ned?
I'm afraid that calls for an explanation.
Yes, I expect that it does.
Well?
I'm sorry, but I can't explain anything until tomorrow.
But really, Mr. Wales, don't you think—
I think my action is almost indefensible. I'm admitting that, but I have very good reasons for what I'm doing. Roscoe, I've been your close friend for a great many years. You've trusted me and believed in me. I'm going to ask you to wait. After all, 24 hours can't make any difference, and it may save you all a great deal of unhappiness.
This is intolerable.
Ned, I can't understand.
Father, this is my affair.
I'm sorry.
Sorry? I should think you would be.
Billy, I told you what would happen. Mr. Wales, I don't know what you have discovered, but it's nothing of which I am ashamed. Nothing.
Dear, you mustn't mind what he says.
Oh, but I do. I can't bear it. Why, my mother is the most wonderful woman in the world. I won't have her attacked. Do you know what she did? When I was 10 years old she sent me away from her. I was the one thing she had in the world to love, and she gave me up because she thought it was the best thing she could do for me. I was sent to a fine school, then to college, and then when I was 19, quite by accident, I found out that she wasn't dead, as they'd always told me. And when I went to her, all she said was, "Well, my dear, I wanted to make a lady of you."
He takes her in his arms.
I think she succeeded, my dear.
Miss O'Neill, I didn't even know that you had a mother.
Then you'd better tell us now, whatever your objection is.
I can tell you nothing until tomorrow. Billy, I'd rather be shot than do what I'm doing. If I'm wrong, I'll come to you gladly and eat dirt. I'll beg this young lady's pardon on my knees if she likes.
Voices and laughter heard off left.
Now that's all I'm going to say about it until then.
The door left opens. Mary Eastwood, Helen Trent, Elizabeth Erskine, Grace Standish, Howard Standish, Philip Mason, and Bradish Trent enter, laughing and talking.
And he said, "Whose wife?"
Quiet. Quiet, everybody. I've got a surprise for you.
From the people at the door come laughter and buzz of conversation.
Nellie and I are going to be married.
Girls rush center and congratulate Helen. Men and William left center, congratulating him.
If you hadn't been engaged to her, she could have you arrested for the way you made eyes at her at dinner, Billy. But of course, if people marry, why, I hope you'll be awfully happy.
Isn't it beautiful?
Crossing to William and kissing him.
I'm glad, Billy, glad.
William and Helen look around, see that no one is paying attention to them. William sneaks up to door right center, opens it, and he and Helen exit quickly.
Marriage is such an awful gamble. I know a girl who tried it 4 times. Billy, I do hope you... Why, they are gone!
Miss Eastwood runs up to door right center, opens it, looks in dining room, gives a scream, closes door quickly, enter butler from down left.
Mrs. Crosby, the person you sent the car for has arrived.
All turn eagerly toward him.
Can we see her now, Mrs. Crosby?
Certainly. Pollock, ask Madame Lagrange if she will come in, please.
Yes, madame.
He exits and closes the door after him.
I'm perfectly thrilled. Do you suppose she expects to be taken seriously?
Of course.
How funny! If you don't laugh at her, we can have no end of fun. I'll guy her terribly, and she'll never know it.
Oh, I wouldn't do that, Mary. She may be quite in earnest.
Oh, I can't believe that. Madame Lagrange. I can see her now. Tall, black-haired creature, regular adventuress. See if she isn't she, Mr. Wales?
She's the most remarkable woman I have ever known.
Enter butler from door left.
Madame Lagrange.
Enter Madame Rosalie Lagrange. She is a woman of about 50. She speaks with a marked French accent.
Good evening, everybody.
The men all rise.
How do you do, Madame Lagrange?
I am well, I thank you, madame.
Do come in.
Thank you, madame. Good evening, Mr. Wiles. It was kind of you to send a motor car for me.
We wanted you to be comfortable.
And I was. Do you know, madame, when the gentleman in uniform called for me, I thought at first it was a policeman.
I hope you weren't frightened.
Oh, no, madame. I should like to see the policeman that could frighten me. They are nice boys, the policemen.
Mr. Wells tells us you're wonderful.
All women are.
With a meaning glance at the others.
So, you tell fortunes?
No, mademoiselle, I do not. I get messages from those of us that have passed on. I do not hold at all with the cards, nor tea leaves, nor any of those tricks. Once in a while I give advice. If I was you, mademoiselle, I would not meet Jimmy at the Ritz at 3 o'clock tomorrow. Well, sir, and how are you?
We're expecting great things from you tonight, Madame Lagrange.
Bien. I hope you will not be disappointed.
I suppose there are a lot of tricks that...
I suppose mine is the only trade in the world in which there are tricks, monsieur?
Why shouldn't I meet Jimmy at the Ritz tomorrow?
If you do, something awful may happen to him.
What?
If you keep meeting Jimmy, he may marry you.
Would you mind telling me how you know this young lady was going to meet Jimmy at the Ritz tomorrow afternoon?
She did leave his letter in her bag in the hall, and while I wait, I've read it.
How did you know it was my bag?
The stuff of the bag matches the stuff of your dress.
Then it is all trickery.
It is, madame, and it is not. I tell you, madame, most of the time it is tricks, with even the best of us. But there have been times in my life when it was not tricks. There have been things I could not understand myself, messages from them that have passed on, madame. There is a power, a wonderful power that come to us, but you never can tell when it is coming, and if you waited for it, you would starve to death. So when it is not there, we use tricks.
I think I understand.
Do you, madame? I thought you would.
She moves too, and puts her handbag on the table.
Don't you think this is all dishonest?
What is dishonest in it?
Tricking a lot of poor, ignorant people.
It is all in the way you look at it. A widow woman came to me this morning with a breaking heart for the man that was gone. I went into a trance, and laughing eyes, my spirit control, came with a message from him. She said he was in heaven with the angels, and there was no cold nor hunger, and the streets were paved with gold, and there was music and happiness everywhere. She told her he was thinking of her every day and every hour, and watching and waiting for the day she would come to him. Now wasn't that worth 50 cents of any woman's money? And the man may be in hell for all I know.
What I can't understand is why you're telling us all this.
If we know you were fooling.
Did not Mr. Wales tell you?
I've told them nothing.
Well, tell them now, if you please, sir.
As I told you some time ago, Madame Lagrange has done a lot of things that we can't explain.
You mean test conditions?
Not exactly. What she said was that no money should pass between us, and that whatever she did, she would be honest.
You mean that you won't play any tricks?
If I do, I will tell you.
Of course, we understand all about spirit rappings.
You do, eh?
Well, rather.
Well, what do you think of that?
You have to be near a table or something like that, and...
Maybe a chair or a desk would do.
And then in the dark.
But of course in the dark. And you get 1 rap for yes and 2 raps for no. Are those spirits near?
All laugh.
Oh no, don't.
1 rap is heard from the back of the fireplace.
But...
Oh, please keep still.
They gather a little closer around Rosalie.
Is it laughing eyes?
1 rap is heard, still louder.
And you cannot talk to me in the light. Are you happy?
Mrs. Trent rises.
Is there someone here you do not like? A gentleman? There, a lady.
She points to Miss Eastwood.
Is it that one? Laughing eyes, she do not like you.
That's the most wonderful thing I ever heard.
Oh, I don't think.
It couldn't be a trick. She just stood there. I watched her hands every minute.
You did watch the wrong end of me. I have a wooden sole in my shoe.
She lifts her skirt and shows that she has taken 1 foot from her slipper.
You do it with your foot, like this. It is a trick.
Then if we get any messages...
If you get any messages? Well, sir, I am telling you the truth now. Most of the time it is a fake, with me as with the others. But tonight there will be no fake. I am a stranger to all of you, except to Mr. Wales. I do not know who live in this house. I do not know the name of any one of you. Mr. Wales told me he wanted me to come here. He said he would send for me. But he did not tell me 1 word about any of you.
That is quite true.
You haven't given her a hint of any sort?
On my word of honor.
Madame Lagrange?
Yes, sir.
I know a man who saw Palladino lift a table just by putting her hands on it.
Rosalie points to a small console table right end of settee. It has a lamp on it. Rosalie putting handbag on chair above table right.
Will someone please take the lamp off that table? And will you bring it to me here?
Miss Standish moves too and takes the lamp and holds it. Mason brings console table to Rosalie, who comes down center. the wide side of the table to audience. Rosalie puts her hands on table with her thumbs under its edge and lifts the table and turns right and left.
You mean like that?
Yes, I suppose that was it.
In the dark, you would not have noticed my thumbs. But it can be done. It can be done. I do not say I can do it in the light, but if you want, I will try.
Oh, yes, yes, of course. Please do. Yes, yes.
You mean without any trickery?
Rosalie, turning table around, narrow side to audience.
I mean like this.
She places the tips of the fingers of both hands on the center of the table and stands rigid for a few moments. No one speaks. All watch her with breathless interest. Slowly the table tips a little to one side and then tips in the opposite direction. Then it slowly rises about a foot from the floor and then drops suddenly and falls over. There is a long pause.
Good Lord!
What did I tell you?
There is a long pause. All turn towards Rosalie to see what she will do next.
Now you all do know what I can do, but I can trick you too. So you will have to take my word for it that I will not. I'm not making to you any promises. I will go into the trance for you, and it will be the real trance and not a fake. My spirit does control a little girl named Laughing Eyes.
Are you asking us to believe that the spirit of a dead child...
To them that believe there is no death. Your own religion teaches you that.
But not that the spirits of the dead can come back to earth.
Monsieur should go and read the Bible. I am not going to argue with any of you. I did not come here for an argument. Most of you do not believe. You are all of little faith. It is hard to get messages then. Perhaps it would be best if I did go.
Oh, no, please stay.
Madame, I will be glad to.
And you're willing to submit to our conditions?
Of course. Anything in reason.
Why?
At the sound of a new voice, Rosalie turns. She gives a little start, and then moves quickly to Helen's center.
Wait! Something is coming to me. Please, not anyone to speak.
All laugh.
It is a message. Give me your hand, mademoiselle.
Helen, in a good deal of confusion, gives Rosalie her hand. Rosalie stands and holds it. Her eyes are closed.
There is nothing but happiness coming to you. The spirits tell me you are the favorite child of fortune. You will have wealth and prosperity and happiness. You will marry the man you love, and you will be happy all your life. There is something I want to tell her just for herself. She is so young. We must spare her modesty.
Mother!
My darling, I did not know. They just brought me here. You know I would not have come for anything in the world if I had known.
Helen starts to break away. Rosalie clutches her.
Don't tell them there. Don't have me shame you before all your wonderful friends. I will go in 1 minute. I will get away from the house the first minute I can.
But, Mother, there's no shame. I'm proud.
Tell them afterwards, if you must tell them. But let me get away before you do so. Remember now, mademoiselle, all the love in the world is hanging above you and praying for your happiness. Do not let it go for the love of heaven.
What did she tell you?
You heard most of it. I'll tell you the rest later.
I think I had better go from here.
That's absurd. Madame Lagrange wants to call off the séance.
I thought she might.
Did you really, miss?
Oh, won't you please stay?
I'm afraid I cannot, madame. I am not feeling right. I am not just myself, madame.
Really, Madame Lagrange, I'm afraid, under the circumstances...
Rosalie, getting handbag from chair.
I am very sorry, but I must go from here.
I think it's a shame to bother her, and I think she's quite right to go. Her sort of tricks aren't for people of intelligence.
Oh, won't you please stay?
I must not.
Won't you, as a great favour to me?
Well, miss, since you ask it, I will stay.
I'm very glad. Really, I'm greatly interested.
Thank you, madame.
I think after what we've seen, we must ask Madame Lagrange to submit to certain conditions.
Anything at all, sir. Anything at all.
I agree with you. Frankly, this woman impresses me. I think this test should be taken seriously.
Just what I was going to say.
If you will submit to the conditions we impose, Madame Lagrange, and then show us any manifestations, I will never scoff at anything again.
Scoffing is the easiest thing anybody can do. If I could stop that even in one person, it would be a good thing. What is it that you do want?
I want the window fastened.
That's the idea.
Then we will have the doors locked. Will that be all right?
Oh, certainly all right.
At the risk of seeming unnecessarily skeptical, I'm going to suggest that we search Madame Lagrange. That is, of course, if she's willing.
But why not? There are no holes in my stockings.
I suppose it's going to be difficult for you to get results if we're all so antagonistic, Madame Lagrange.
It is, sir, and it is not. If there is any who wants to communicate with an air, maybe they can reach us. I do not know. I do not understand you. I showed you all the tricks. Would I have done that if I wanted to fool you? Certainly I would not. Then why will you not believe that I am honest?
I'm sure Madame Lagrange is perfectly honest. We've made certain stipulations to which she has agreed. I think we've discussed matters enough already. We're ready if you are, Madame Lagrange.
I am ready.
Do you know, I don't believe it will be necessary to subject Madame Lagrange to being searched. I'm quite sure we can spare her that indignity.
I do not mind if you find ladies will not be shocked at seeing my plain lingerie.
Come with me, then, please. I'm sure we won't be shocked. I wear that kind myself.
Truly, madame.
They go to door.
We shan't be long.
Madame, would you mind if all the ladies come? Then they will all be sure I am concealing nothing.
The ladies all talk together and go out.
Do you really want that window fastened?
I don't care.
I'd like to make the test that way. I've a queer feeling about that woman. I believe she really has power of some sort. I know it seems funny, but, well, you all saw her lift that table. I watched her carefully. There was no trick about it at all. I'm sure of it.
All right, then. You fasten the window. Billy, you and Brad go and get some chairs out of the dining room. We'll need a lot. You put them in a circle, don't you?
Begins to place chairs in a circle.
What are you going to do, Wales? Ask her a lot of questions?
I'm going to try to find out who killed Spencer Lee.
Still harping on the murder of Spencer Lee?
Yes.
Who was Spencer Lee?
The best friend I ever had.
Trent and William enter door right center, each carrying 2 chairs. They bring them down right center and exit right center.
We all knew Lee pretty well, and I know he was no good.
You mustn't talk like that about him, Standish.
The man's dead. Why not let him rest in peace?
I didn't bring up the matter, you know, and I don't want to hurt Ned's feelings. But I know that the police found a lot of compromising letters and rotten things of that sort.
William and Trent re-enter from right center, each carrying 2 chairs. William crosses and places 2 chairs right side of circle, then goes back to close the door.
I don't care what they found or what anyone thinks of Lee. He was my best friend, and if I can find out who killed him, I'm going to do it. It was a damned brutal murder. Stabbed in the back, poor chap, with never a chance to fight for his life.
I don't seem to remember anything about the case.
It happened before you got back from France. No, by Jove, it didn't either. It was a day or 2 after. I remember you and I had lunch together the day you got home, and I had dinner that night with Spencer. Funny you don't remember anything about it.
Well, of course I must have seen it in the papers, but I don't go in much for crimes, and not knowing the man I wasn't interested.
It was a good deal of a sensation. The man knew a lot of nice people. Came here a good deal, didn't he, Mr. Crosby?
At one time, but after Helen married, he rather dropped out of it. Fact is, until Trent here appeared on the scene, he was always hanging around.
Funny, they never found out who killed him.
They may not. They haven't stopped trying.
Oh, are the police still interested?
Yes, they're interested. As a matter of fact, there's a reward of $5,000 for the discovery of the murderers.
Are you sure of that?
I offered it.
You?
Yes. What sort of man do you think I am? Do you expect me to sit still and let the murderers of Spencer Lee go free? Why, I'd known the man all his life, We were the closest friends.
But if he was the kind of man that Standish says...
I don't give a damn what he was. He was my friend, and I'm never going to rest till I find out who killed him.
But...
I wouldn't care so much if they'd given the poor devil half a chance for his life, but they stabbed him in the back.
Wasn't there any indication?
There wasn't a thing to show who did it, or how it was done. A knife wound between the shoulder blades, and no knife ever found. Nothing stolen, nothing disturbed. The police have found out that a young woman called to see him that afternoon, 2 or 3 hours before his body was discovered. That's all that we know.
And now you're going to try spiritualism.
Why not? Do any of you object?
Certainly not. I'm rather for it.
You are doing this seriously? This is not a joke?
Quite seriously. Well, why won't somebody laugh?
My dear fellow, why should anyone laugh? This queer old woman may have powers of which we know nothing at all. Personally, I haven't much belief in that sort of thing, but I'm not going to laugh at it. Neither am I going to have any trickery. Or if there is any, I'm going to expose it.
That's perfectly fair.
You've been at her seances, or whatever they call them, before?
Yes.
In the dark?
Invariably.
I may want light. Billy, if I call for lights, you give them to me. Don't wait for anything, understand?
Perfectly, Dad.
William goes up to small table right of Chesterfield, brings table with lamp on it down to his chair, and the chair next to it in the circle.
That's all right, then.
The door left opens. Mrs. Crosby enters, followed by Madame Lagrange and the other ladies.
I think it wasn't fair of us.
Oh, madame, I did not mind.
I can assure you there isn't anything up her sleeve.
Well, what did you expect? Burglar's tools?
Mrs. Trent closes door down left.
Madame Lagrange, we've fastened the windows.
That's right. You cannot be too careful, eh?
And now, if you don't mind, I'm going to lock the doors and keep the keys in my pocket.
Anything you do wish, sir. It is all the same to me.
Goes inside circle and sits down up center in circle.
May I see that it's done, Mr. Crosby?
Ha! Can't you trust me?
It isn't that. I just want to be sure. To see for myself.
Lock that one yourself, then.
Indicating door, right center, Mason goes to and locks the door. Crosby goes to door left center, locks it, takes out the key, and puts it in his pocket.
Better try it, Mason.
Mason crosses to door left center, shows it is locked.
Now we'll do this one.
He starts to door down left, then stops suddenly.
No, I've got a better way than this. My dear, will you ring for Pollock?
What are you going to do now?
Wait and see. You don't object to this?
Oh, no, sir.
Butler enters from door left.
Oh, Pollock, I want you to put these keys in your pocket.
Hands them to him. Pollock puts them in his waistcoat pocket.
Yes, sir.
Now then, I want you to take the key out of that door and lock it on the outside. Understand?
Perfectly, sir.
Then take the key from the lock and put that one in your pocket also. After that, you are to stand outside that door, and you are not to unlock it until I tell you to. Understand?
Yes, sir. I'm to lock this door on the outside, keep the key in my pocket, and then stay just outside, and not open it for anyone until you tell me.
Exactly.
Pollock goes to the door left, takes out the key and exits, closing the door after him. The key is heard turning in the lock.
Now then, Mason, you'd better try that door too.
Mason goes over and tries the door left. Crosby follows him. Speaking through the door left.
Are you there, Pollock?
Yes, sir.
And the keys are in your pocket?
Quite so, sir.
Now we're ready, Madame Lagrange.
Then please will you all sit in a circle and hold hands?
Hold hands? I'm going to love this.
How shall we sit? I mean, do you want us in any particular order?
Any way at all.
I'll sit here.
Takes chair and sits in reach of lamp on table right center.
Any way will do.
They all sit in a circle in the following order. Rosalie center, Crosby left of Rosalie, Miss Erskine, Miss Standish, Trent, Miss Eastwood, Mason, Helen, Mrs. Trent, Standish, and Mrs. Crosby. William sits on Rosalie's right side. This will bring Wales sitting at center with his back to the audience. Rosalie directly opposite upstage facing him. The 13 chairs in the circle consist of 2 brought from the fireplace, 2 from the table right, 8 from the room right center, and the armchair left center, which is moved center and used by Rosalie.
I'm to sit next to you, Mr. Crosby.
I've always wanted to hold your hand, my dear.
Don't trust him, Daisy.
I won't, Mrs. Crosby.
I'll chaperone them.
Will you sit by me?
I'll take this place, then.
I'm really getting quite a thrill. What's the joke, Madame Lagrange?
I did not know anything could give to you a thrill.
You don't like me, do you, Madame Lagrange?
Oh, mademoiselle, I am indeed very fond of you.
I think we're all ready.
The others are all seated, and Wales is about to sit down. Miss Erskine, counting hurriedly.
Oh, there are 13 of us. Don't sit there, Mr. Wales.
Oh, I don't mind those little superstitions.
Wales sits down between Helen and Mrs. Trent.
What do we do now?
Now, will you please all join your hands, and then sit very, very quiet. Do not try to think of anything.
By Jove, that'll be easy for me.
The others laugh.
We can't get any results if you treat this as a joke.
Oh, let's be serious.
Why, Howard?
Well, there might be something in it. Anyhow, it's only fair to do what Madame Lagrange wants. I suppose you'd like the lights out? I've always understood that was necessary.
We shall have better results in that way.
Right.
He rises, goes to door left, and switches off light. This leaves only the 2 table lamps right and left of the Chesterfield center still lit. Crosses back to his chair, turns out table lamp left of Chesterfield.
Billy, you turn out that light as soon as we're ready.
Right you are, Dad.
That is all, then. Now you're not to be afraid if I cry or moan when I do go into a trance. I am not in pain or anything like that. I do not even know that I do such things, but I have been told that it sometimes happen. My spirit control is a sweet little child named Laughing Eyes. When she begins to talk, you can ask her anything you want. If she do not answer you, she do not want to talk to you. Then whoever it is speaking must let someone else try. That is all, ladies and gentlemen. Now then, sir, please to put out that light.
William turns off the light, and the stage is in darkness, all but spots on ceiling.
That won't do. Billy, pull down that blind. That light on the ceiling is too strong.
William turns on light, crosses right, pulls blind down and closes curtains, then resumes his seat and puts light out.
There's a hand on my face! There's a hand on my face!
Will, the light!
The light on the table goes up, showing William leaning back in his chair with one hand on the switch, the other is tightly clasped in his father's hand. Rosalie is seen standing behind Miss Eastwood, with her hand resting on Miss Eastwood's cheek.
It's a trick.
Yes, it is a trick.
They stop and stare at her. Her manner is commanding and a little stern.
I was going to ask you to tie my hands to the arm of the chair, but I thought I would show you this first.
I don't see how you did it, even now.
Things happen in the dark. The sense of touch is not much developed except in those who are blind. When this young gentleman did let go my hand and turn out the light, I did take my other hand away from Mr. Crosby, and then we joined hands again. The 2 gentlemen were holding hands as comfortable as you please, and I was free. It is an old trick. All the mediums do use it. Anyone can do it.
She moves back to her chair and sits.
Now, if someone will tie me in, we will go on.
How do we know that you can't get free even then?
Tie me so that I cannot.
I'll see to that. I want something strong.
Take handkerchiefs. They're strong enough.
Takes handkerchief.
They'll do very well.
Takes out his own.
I want 3 more.
Here's mine.
Hands his handkerchief to his father. Mason and Trent give Crosby theirs.
Now, Madame Lagrange, if you don't mind.
He ties her hands to the arm of the chair.
I don't see why you did that just now.
I told you I wanted to be sure.
Why?
Because I think something is going to happen. I think there will be manifestations. I wanted you to know I was not faking.
Why should we think that you were?
Why, you have thought nothing else ever since I did come into the room.
Mason, see if she can get free from that now.
Mason comes over, inspects the knot, Crosby tying the other hand.
That seems pretty secure. Someone else look at it.
William and Trent rise and go to Rosalie's chair.
I'm going to fasten your ankles now, Madame Lagrange.
Yes, that is right.
Crosby ties Rosalie's ankles to leg of chair. The other two men look on.
I don't believe all this is necessary.
Why not, if they do want it?
Now I'm sure she can't get away.
Mason inspects Knott.
So am I.
The men resume their places.
Well now, if you will all sit down, please. You will have to reach over and take my hands this time. Are you satisfied now? Is there anything more you want me to do?
There is no answer.
Then if you will all sit quiet, just keep your minds perfectly free. That is all you have to do. Now, sir, please to turn out the light.
William turns out the light. There is a long pause. Rosalie moans and whispers as if in pain.
Oh,
I can't stand this.
Please keep still. She asks us to keep still.
Rosalie moans again.
Oh.
After a short pause, she gives a choking sob. Another pause. Finally, she speaks with frequent pauses, using the voice of a little child.
Laughing Eyes is sad, very sad. I'm a long way off, a long way. Bad people, unhappy. He is unhappy.
Knife is in sight of audience, sticking in the ceiling.
Spencer wants to tell Ned. Oh, it hurts, terrible, like a knife. It burns in the back.
A man's voice from the Chesterfield, facing fireplace, speaks.
Ned. I want Ned. Why in hell doesn't Ned answer?
He wants to talk to Ned. Is Ned here?
Ned who? Who is it? Who does he want to speak to?
Tell Ned it is Spencer. Spencer wants to tell Ned about the letters and the pain in the back. In the back.
What was in the back?
There is no answer.
Ask him what was in the back.
The knife, Ned. He wants Ned.
What do you want?
A swimming pool. Do not forget the swimming pool. Do not ever forget.
You mean the time he went in after me when I was drowning? When we were little boys? Is that what he wants me to remember?
Spencer says he cannot rest. He wants to tell you it is hard to reach. Too far away. You promised.
Promised what? When did I promise?
Your life saved.
Now I know. I told him I'd do anything in the world for him. Spencer, of course I remember. What do you want me to do?
Find.
Do you want me to find the letters?
In the back. Someone came.
You're trying to tell who killed you?
Ask.
You want me to ask questions? Is that it? You mean you can't talk much?
Too far away.
You know who killed you?
There is no answer.
He says Ned. He wants Ned.
You want me to ask?
He wants Ned to ask.
Do you know who killed you?
Oh, my God.
Keep still, Helen.
Can you tell the name? Quick, the name. The name! Spencer, tell me who killed you. She's coming out of her trance. I want the name. Oh, my God! My back! Oh!
Wales, is anything the matter?
Father, he's pulling at my hand.
The light, Will.
William suddenly turns on the light at table. Wales is discovered leaning forward. The circle is unbroken.
Look at him, Father, look at him.
Crosby drops Rosalie's hand and springs forward towards Wales. At the same instant, Wales falls forward on his face to the floor. The others all rise. Chairs are knocked over in the confusion which follows.
Stand back, please.
The others move back a little. Crosby leans over Wales.
Why, it's impossible.
Roscoe, look at your hand.
Crosby looks at his hand, takes out his handkerchief, and wipes it hurriedly, then crosses suddenly to the door left. Rosalie has come out of her trance and sits staring at Wales as he lies on the floor in front of her. The two figures are thrown out from the shadows of the room by the light on the table at the back of Madame Lagrange. The rest of the room is in semi-darkness. Trent kneels by Wales's body.
Pollock! Pollock!
Yes, sir.
Trent turns Wales's body over on back.
Get on the phone at once. And call up police headquarters. Get Inspector Donahue if you can. Tell him to come to the house at once.
Very good, sir.
Father, what do you suppose it is? Are you sure that...
It can't be. He was talking and...
Roscoe, are you sure? Hadn't we better send for a doctor?
Trent is leaning over Wales's body on the floor.
It's no use. He's dead.
Murdered.
What?
Mr. Wales was stabbed in the back, just as Spencer Lee was stabbed in the back.
Just as he was asking. Just when he was trying to find out who.
There is a knock at the door.
What is it?
Inspector Donahue was at 51st Street Station, sir. He's on his way here. Shall I unlock the door, sir?
No, not until the inspector tells you to.
Curtain. End of Act 1. Act 2 of The 13th Chair by Bayard Veiller. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Act 2, 10 minutes later. Discovered. Crosby standing by the door left. Rosalie still tied in chair. Dummy, supposed to represent Wales' body, covered by a piece of drapery, has been placed on Chesterfield facing fireplace up center. Mrs. Trent seated below console table left end of Chesterfield. Miss Eastwood seated at right end of console table, right of Chesterfield, rattling book leaves. Standish standing over right below table. Miss Standish is sitting left center. Helen, William, standing above table right. Mrs. Crosby seated left next to Rosalie. Miss Erskine seated next to Mrs. Crosby, tapping the sides of the chair with her fingers. Mason in front of fireplace center, looking at Wales's body. Eventually he moves to Miss Eastwood and takes the book away from her.
Father, please let me go to my room.
It is impossible, my dear.
But, Mr. Crosby...
It's quite impossible.
Mr. Crosby, I must.
Mr. Standish, I just refuse to let my own daughter leave the room.
But don't you see, sir?
My dear Standish, poor Wales was killed by someone in this room. We are all of us under suspicion. Every one of us.
Slight movement from all.
It's an awful thing to say, but one of us in this room has killed Wales. Which one of us?
Knock on door.
Yes?
The police are here, sir.
Who is it?
Inspector Donahue.
Pollock, give Inspector Donahue all the keys.
Yes, sir.
What is all this?
I don't know, I'm sure. I was told to lock the door. I don't know what's been going on inside. Then I was told to call you. This is the right key for that door.
The noise of the key being put into the lock can be heard. Then the click as it is turned in the lock. Then the door is opened, and Inspector Donahue in plain clothes comes well on stage left. He is seen to be a clean-cut, intelligent-looking man of 50. It later develops that he is reserved and extremely quiet in manner. He speaks like a gentleman and acts like one. Sergeant Dunn enters also.
Where's Mr. Wales?
How did you know that Wales...
I don't know anything. I was thinking of something else. I was told that I was wanted here in a hurry.
Queer, you asking for Wales. Mr. Wales is dead. That's why I sent for you.
Wales is what?
Wales is dead.
Yes, and if you ask me...
Just a minute, please, miss. It must have been very sudden. Why, only this afternoon Did he ask you to send for me?
Inspector, you don't seem to understand. Mr. Wales was murdered in this room not 15 minutes ago.
Donahue, his manner changing abruptly.
Mike, that door.
Sergeant Dunn closes door and stands in front of it.
Where have you taken him?
Crosby pointing to the Chesterfield.
There.
Donahue goes up left end of Chesterfield to center and stands looking down on the body. There is a long pause, and then, slowly raising his head, looks with terrible deliberation at each person in the room.
Who did this?
We don't know.
Then I expect we'll have to find out.
He comes down by the right end of the Chesterfield, and stops when he sees Rosalie. He gives a short laugh as he sees how she is tied to the chair.
What's this?
Mrs. Crosby rises.
Good heavens, we forgot to untie her. I'm so sorry.
Thank you, madame. I am quite comfortable. I will stay as I am, if you do not mind.
But
I think we'll leave things as they are for the present.
Mrs. Crosby resumes the same seat as before.
A policeman with brains? Oh la la!
Let's see if he can't use them then. Now, Mr. Crosby, tell me exactly what happened.
I know it sounds foolish, but we were having a spiritualistic séance. Madame Lagrange is a medium.
I see.
We were sitting in the dark, in a circle, you know, holding hands. Suddenly Wales cried out. I called to my son to turn on the light. He did so. Wales was leaning forward in his chair. His hands were in those of the people he sat between, and all the rest of us were sitting around.
All of you?
Yes.
I thought you told your son to turn on the lights.
If you're implying that...
I'm not implying anything, and please, answer my questions.
Inspector, I was sitting there and simply made a move to turn on the light. I had chosen a seat purposely. We wanted to expose trickery, if we found any.
I understand. Go on, Mr. Crosby.
In a moment poor Wales fell to the floor. I ran to him and found he had been stabbed in the back. Before we could call for aid, he was dead.
Did he say anything?
No. I think that he was dead before we got to him.
What happened then?
As soon as I realized what had happened, I sent for you.
Why for me? Why not simply notify the police? I mean, was there any special reason for wanting me?
There was, but I wasn't conscious of it at the time. We had been talking about the killing of Spencer Lee earlier in the evening, and I suppose that subconsciously I remembered that you were handling that case, which brought yours as the first name to my mind, that's all.
I see. Now then, who's been in or out of this room since? Of course, you know you had no right to move Mr. Wales.
Yes, I know, but I couldn't let him lie there on the floor. It was a little too much. You see, we were all locked in here, and...
Locked in? You mean as I found you when I came?
Exactly. We had all of the windows fastened and the doors locked for the séance. Pollock had the keys. I refused to let him open the door until you came.
Mr. Crosby, you are forgiven for breaking the coroner's rules. As I understand, then, you were sitting in this room with the doors and windows locked. You were in the dark. Wales was stabbed in the back, the lights were turned on, and no one has left the room or entered since.
No one but you.
I didn't kill him.
There is a long pause. Then he turns with a sweeping gesture.
Which one of you did?
Slight movement from others. There is another long pause. No one speaks.
Now, I'm not going to employ the usual police methods. There is to be no threatening or badgering. But you all can see that there can be no escape for the guilty person. I realize that this is a terrible situation for all of you, but the only way to relieve it is for the murderer of Mr. Wales to confess. It will save a long, and I assure you, a very trying police investigation. Let me say also that there will be no recriminations, no unpleasant scenes. I realize that this seems a very weak plea for a confession, but I am counting on the intelligence of the people now in this room.
He takes out his watch and holds it face upward in his hand.
I have unlimited time, but not a great deal of patience. Well?
He finally replaces his watch with a little gesture of finality.
Very well, then.
He turns suddenly to Miss Eastwood.
What is your name?
Mary Eastwood.
A moment ago, Miss Eastwood, you started to tell me something. You said, if you ask me. Now I am asking you, what was it you wanted to tell me?
I don't want to, especially, but I think I ought to tell you this. No one else seems to have thought of it. When the séance started, we were all sitting in a circle, holding each other's hands, as I understand it.
We can take it for granted that I know how that is done. Go on, please.
The medium got out of the circle without our knowing it, and then showed us how she did the trick.
I see.
Why couldn't she have done it again? Of course, that's what someone did, isn't it? And if she could get out of the circle without our knowing it, she could get back in again, couldn't she? That's what I wanted to tell you.
If any one of you, or all of you, can get me out of this chair without untying me or cutting me loose, I will say that I've done that murder.
Thank you, Miss Eastwood. It's only fair to tell you that there isn't a trick or an effect that these people do that the police do not understand perfectly.
Is that so?
Donahue goes over and examines the way in which Rosalie is tied to the chair.
Why was she tied up?
At her own request. As Miss Eastwood says, she showed us how she broke out of the circle, and then suggested that we tie her into that chair to make sure she didn't do it again.
It's lucky for her that she did. Even if she had slipped out of those knots, there's no way in the world that she could get back in.
I did say these policemen had brains. Get me loose there, Inspector. My footy sleeps.
Donahue turns back and unties handkerchiefs with which she is tied. She gets up and stands in front of armchair.
Thank you very much, Miss Eastwood. That eliminates one.
Then I can go.
Starting for door.
You cannot. Anyone else anything they want to tell me? No? Mike, you better phone the coroner and ask him to come up here. Tell him I do not want the case reported yet, and suggest that he hurries.
Yes, Inspector.
He turns and exits left, leaving the door open behind him. Standish and Trent start towards door.
That open door does not mean freedom for any of you yet.
I'm awfully sorry, Inspector, but I've an important business engagement at 10 o'clock. My father-in-law here will...
That's quite impossible.
That is all very well, Inspector. But you know you can't keep us in this room forever. If you want to take the consequences of accusing me of murder, well, that's your affair. But my patience is exhausted, and I haven't the slightest intention of remaining here much longer. Unless, of course, you are planning to arrest me.
I see. By the way, who are you?
Howard Standish, of Standish, Giles and Updegraff, 120 Broadway. My brother is Judge Standish of the Supreme Court.
And you refuse to remain here any longer?
I do.
Very well, Mr. Standish of Standish, Giles and Optograph. You are arrested as a material witness in this case. As soon as Sergeant Dunn returns, he will call a patrol wagon and take you down to the house of detention. Are there any others who insist on leaving this room?
I beg your pardon, Inspector. I acted like a fool.
Not at all, sir. Your actions are entirely natural.
Hello? Hello? No, sir. But Inspector Donahue wants you to come here at once. We're at Mr. Roscoe Crosby's house. No, sir.
Donahue crosses over and closes the door.
He doesn't want the case reported yet.
We needn't be bothered with that, anyway. Well, I'm afraid we have to begin work.
He goes over to table right and sits down stage end of table, takes paper and gets pencil.
With the exception of Mr. Crosby, who is known to nearly everyone, and Mr. Standish, who has so pleasantly introduced himself to me, I know none of you. So I'll have to ask...
He stops suddenly and rises, facing them all. He points slowly to the Chesterfield.
That's rather a gruesome thing there. I think we'll move it into another room. Will some of you gentlemen carry Mr. Whale's body into the other room?
The men all hesitate. Finally, Mason starts to move to Chesterfield.
Thank you very much. We'll...
Dunn enters.
Dr. Bernstein himself is on the way here, Inspector.
Good. Mike, get one of the servants to help you to carry this sofa into another room.
Dunn turns and exits without speaking.
I won't have to trouble you after all, sir. Funny how these old superstitions cling to us. One of the first tests for guilt invented by detectives was to ask a supposed murderer to touch the body of his victim. The test didn't work very well, did it? Certainly you 4 gentlemen can't all be guilty. Well, we'll have to try something else. Because, you know, I really am going to arrest the murderer of Edward Wales tonight.
Dunn enters, followed by Pollock.
Carry the sofa into another room, please.
Into that room, please.
Dunn goes up to door left center, turns knob, discovers door is locked. Pollock crosses to right end of Chesterfield facing fireplace.
The door is locked.
Oh, yes. Try these keys.
Dunn comes, gets keys, goes up and unlocks door. He and Pollock pick up Chesterfield, Pollock taking his end of Chesterfield through door first.
And Mike?
Dunn turns his head.
Yes, sir.
Make as quick an examination as you can and report to me here.
The men exit carrying sofa into room.
If you will all come a little closer, please. Now I can see you all quite comfortably. As I started to say a moment ago, I shall have to find out something about each of you. You, madam?
I'm Alicia Crosby, Mrs. Roscoe Crosby.
He makes notes on paper in front of him.
I'm sorry to trouble you, miss.
He points his pencil at Miss Erskine.
Elizabeth Erskine,
It's not necessary to tell your age.
I wasn't going to. I'm the daughter of Edward Erskine. My father is the banker.
I know him, thank you. You are then merely a guest here?
A friend.
Miss Eastwood I already know. And you, miss?
Grace Standish.
My sister.
Oh, and this young lady?
Crosby puts his hand on Mrs. Trent's shoulder.
My daughter, Mrs. Trent. She and Trent live here with us.
And you, sir?
Philip Mason.
That doesn't tell me very much.
There isn't very much to tell. I'm just a friend of the family. We've known each other for years. I've lived in Paris for the last 2 or 3 years. I'm a painter.
You mean an artist?
Well, I don't paint houses or fences, but I'd hardly call myself an artist. Yet.
Poor, I suppose? I know you'll pardon that question, won't you?
Quite all right, I assure you. No, I'm not poor.
Thank you.
Turns toward William, who is standing back of Helen's chair.
And you?
I'm young Crosby.
I see. Live here, I suppose?
Certainly. Where else should I live?
I thought perhaps you might be married.
He's not. But if he were, he'd live here with us, and...
No, Father. When I marry, I've got to have my own home, and...
Nonsense. Don't talk like a fool. You'd live here with me and your mother, and your wife, of course.
I think perhaps we'd better defer that discussion, gentlemen.
He turns toward Helen.
And this young lady?
My fiancée, Miss O'Neill.
Well, that finishes that.
But, Inspector, you haven't asked anything about the medium.
Perhaps I don't consider that necessary, Miss Eastwood.
But...
And I'm terribly set on conducting this investigation in my own way, if you don't mind.
Enter Dunn.
Inspector.
Well?
I can't tell for sure, but I guess the knife went clean into the heart. He must have died instantly.
All right. Let me know when the coroner arrives.
Dunn starts toward door.
And Dunn?
Yes, sir?
You'd better let me have a look at that knife.
Dunn turns sharply and looks at him.
The knife?
Yes, the knife.
I haven't seen any knife. I thought you had it.
No, I haven't seen it. Mr. Crosby.
We didn't find it.
Look carefully.
Everywhere, while we were waiting for you.
Who moved Mr. Whale's body?
I did.
No one else touched him?
No one.
What did you do after you had carried him to the sofa?
I saw that he'd been stabbed. I looked for the knife.
Where?
On the floor, under the stairs, everywhere I could think of.
No trace of it?
None.
What did you do then?
Nothing. I waited for you.
How long after you found that Mr. Wales was killed did you turn on the light?
Why, I told you. We turned on the light before we found out what had happened.
Would it have been possible for the murderer to have hidden it about the room?
I doubt it very much.
Why?
I don't think there would have been time. I don't see how anyone could have done it at all. It's all a mystery to me. I told you the circle was intact, you remember?
Yes, I remember. Then if the knife was hidden, it's probably on the person of the man or woman who used it.
I think so, undoubtedly.
Mike, phone over to the station house and have them send a matron over here.
Dunn exits and closes the door after him.
Now, about that light. There was just the one lamp turned on, as I remember.
Someone turned on the rest of the lights almost immediately.
Could the knife have been hidden about the room since that time?
It's extremely unlikely. We have all been here together. A thing of that sort would have been seen.
Then I expect we'll find it without much trouble.
There is a pause as he looks slowly at each person individually in the room. William puts arm on Helen's shoulders as Donahue looks at him.
In the meantime, I think we'll let it remain where it is.
He turns with a gesture which takes them all in.
You see how inevitably the guilty person must be discovered. Don't you think it would be much simpler to confess? No? Then I suppose we will have to continue. I'd like to visualize the scene a little more clearly. Let's form that circle again. Of course, this time without Mr. Wales. All sit as you were sitting at the séance.
There is a general movement. The minute this suggestion is made, Rosalie comes down, nearer to Donahue, and looks at him anxiously. Something in his suggestion greatly disturbs her.
Will, you were there by the lamp, and Madame Lagrange was next to you, and I was next to her.
Then how did they sit?
I'm trying to remember. It's queer what a jumbled memory one has. If anyone had asked me about it, I would have said I could have told how we were sitting with great accuracy. But I can't, somehow.
I was next to you, Mr. Crosby. Don't you remember Mrs. Crosby? He said he'd always wanted to hold my hand, and we joked about it.
Yes, I remember.
That's all right, then. Who came next?
They all hesitate.
Inspector, I can place them all for you.
But you said you didn't care how we sat.
So I did, sir, but I knew where you were sitting all the same. You will permit that I show you, Inspector.
If you will be so kind.
The young lady was R, and this gentleman, he was R.
Indicating Trent's chair.
By George, I couldn't have told you, but she's right. This is exactly where I was sitting.
Rosalie taking Helen hastily by the shoulder and putting her in the next seat.
And this young lady was R.
Helen looks at her for a moment, and then sinks back in her chair. Rosalie points at Mason.
He did come next.
No, you're wrong there. You're right. I remember perfectly I was next to Miss O'Neill. I know just how her hand felt in the dark.
William looks at him quickly. Helen turns and looks at him in wonder.
Well, really, Mr. Mason.
Oh, I don't mean it that way at all. I assure you I don't.
Then why did you say it?
My dear fellow, I've apologized. You are misunderstanding me.
I think we're all very much upset. Inspector Donahue, must we go through all this again?
I'm afraid so, Mrs. Crosby.
Then let's get it over as quickly as possible.
Mr. Crosby, you seem to forget that this is a police investigation, and must be conducted as I see fit. Who sat next to Mr. Mason?
Rosalie pointing to Miss Eastwood.
This young lady?
I was next to Mr. Mason, wasn't I, Philip?
Yes.
Now then, who occupied this seat?
Mr. Wales. I know because I sat there, and I was next to him. Shall I sit there now?
If you will be so good.
I was next to Mrs. Trent.
And I was here between Mr. Standish and Billy.
She sits. Donahue moves off a step down right, and stands looking at them as they sit. Rosalie moves over and takes her place in armchair.
You are all sure that's where you were sitting?
There's some mix-up here, I know. I wasn't next to Mr. Wales.
Of course you weren't. I don't see what I could have been thinking of. I sat where Miss Eastwood is.
Yes, and I was next to Mr. Trent, between Philip and Mr. Trent. I felt sure I was in the wrong seat.
Then perhaps you ladies will exchange places.
Rosalie gives a little sigh of relief when she sees that Donahue attaches no importance to the substitution she has made, and sits down again. Helen and Miss Eastwood change seats.
Now we're all right, aren't we? You are quite sure that you are all in the places you occupied during the séance?
Yes, I think so.
Donahue puts his hand on the empty chair.
We'll pretend that Mr. Wales is still sitting here. Now, Mr. Crosby, I'll ask you to tell me what happened after the séance began. But first, I'll ask you this question. Was there any special arrangement about the seats?
There was not, sir. I told them that they could sit anywhere they did wish. Young Mr. Crosby's must have sat by the light on purpose, and I am so sorry I did make the mistake about the young ladies. I do not know how I came to make a mistake like that.
Oh, well, if they couldn't remember where they sat, I don't see how I can expect you to be entirely accurate. However, we're all right now. Now, Mr. Crosby.
Well, After Madame Lagrange had shown how she broke out of...
We'll start with the séance.
All look at Donahue.
I know how mediums break the circle and all that, and you needn't describe how she went into that trance of hers.
Inspector, I don't think you're fair to this woman. I think there's something pretty important that you haven't been told.
All look at Mason.
Then you'd better tell me now.
In order that there should be no deception, we had Madame Lagrange searched.
I see.
And while she was out of the room...
Oh, she left the room?
All look at Donahue.
Yes, and all the ladies went with her. Then someone suggested that we ask Madame Lagrange about some special thing, and Mr. Wales said he was going to ask her to get in communication with Spencer Lee and see if we couldn't find out who killed him.
Most ridiculous thing.
As soon as she went into her trance, or whatever it was, Spencer Lee's spirit tried to talk to us.
She began to give you messages from Spencer Lee without knowing that this was what you were trying to get?
Exactly. And there's no use in trying to tell me that there's nothing in spiritualism, because now I know better.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mason. What you've told me is extremely important. I'm anxious to know what was said, because I'm a good deal interested in the Spencer Lee case myself.
Then you think there's something in this spiritualism? I never did until today, but by Jove, you know, you can't explain this any other way.
Madame Lagrange went into a trance. We'll grant that much anyway. What happened then?
After a few minutes she began talking to us in the voice of a little child.
That was Laughing Eyes. My spirit control.
Just what did Laughing Eyes say?
It was all mixed up, none of it very clear. But she seemed to be trying to talk for someone to someone. She kept calling for Ned. Then suddenly she spoke deeply, in a man's voice.
Did the man's message have any importance? I mean, did it seem to make sense?
It was perfectly coherent, at any rate. I can't give you the exact words, but...
I can. He said, "Ned, I want Ned. Why in the hell don't Ned answer me?"
And did anyone answer?
Eventually Wales replied.
I want you all to be extremely careful in what you tell me. I don't want any surmises. In the first place, did the message come for anyone but Mr. Wales?
There was at no time mention of Wales's name. The calls were always for Ned.
I see. Did anyone else answer the calls?
I asked 2 or 3 questions, but no attention was paid to them.
What did Mr. Wales say to all this?
I don't think Mr. Wales spoke at all until the message about saving his life came.
And after that?
There was a regular conversation between them.
Then there was some mention about some letters. I remember, too, that Mr. Wales said, "Are you trying to tell me who killed you?"
What was the reply to that?
All we got were the words, "Ask, ask, ask."
And then I said, "Do you know who killed you?"
Did you get an answer?
Not directly. The message was another cry for Ned.
What happened then?
Then Mr. Wales said, "Do you know who killed you?"
What answer did he get?
None. The medium began to moan and cry. Then Mr. Wales asked her again and again for the name. He kept crying, "Tell me who killed you. I want the name." He must have asked her 2 or 3 times. Then he cried out that he was hurt.
And then?
That's all.
Enter Dunn from door.
The matron is here now, sir.
Just a minute. Just one more question, Mr. Crosby. Did you get the impression that if Mr. Wales had not been killed, his question would have been answered?
If you grant that the séance was real, it would be impossible to arrive at any other conclusion.
It was well established in your mind that Wales was the only person able to get a message?
Yes.
It follows, then, that he was killed in order to prevent his question being answered.
That's the impression I got.
This leads to the conclusion that whoever killed Wales knew who had killed Spencer Lee.
I should think so.
And it is not difficult to surmise that the person who killed Wales was actuated by the strongest of all motives, self-protection. So in all human probability, the murderer of Wales was also the murderer of Spencer Lee. You see, ladies and gentlemen, that by the use of a little patience we have come a long way in our investigation. I don't wish to put you all through the humiliation of a search. I should like to end this inquiry here and now. No? Then we'll have to go on. There is a police matron in the other room who will search the ladies of the party, Sergeant Dunn will perform a similar duty with the men. Mike, you'll take them one at a time. It makes no difference to me in what order they go."
Well, I've got nothing to conceal.
Neither have I.
"I'd rather you waited for a few minutes, Madame Lagrange.
Rosalie looks at him sharply.
Any of the other ladies will do."
Suppose I set the others a good example.
"Thank you very much. And thank you all for the great help you've given me. You need not sit there any longer unless you wish."
Inspector, I think you are perfectly wonderful."
"Oh, we haven't done very much yet, Miss Eastwood. Give the police a little time."
He turns, and with an abrupt change of tone,
"Madame Lagrange, there's a question I wish to ask you."
Anything at all, sir.
"When Mr. Wales asked you for the name, why didn't you answer him?"
I do not know. I was in a trance.
"Then you didn't hear the question?"
How could I?
"I didn't ask you that. I want to know why you didn't answer him."
I've already told you. I was in a trance. I did not know what was going on.
"Why didn't you tell the name that you had agreed with Wales you would tell?"
Agreed?
"You heard what I said." "Well, why didn't you carry out your part of the bargain? Why didn't you give him the name as you'd planned?"
I do not know what you do mean.
"My words are perfectly plain. I asked you why you didn't carry out your part of the bargain."
There was not any bargain.
"Your whole séance was a fake. It was not only planned, but rehearsed between you and Wales. He thought that a woman had killed his friend. He told you about it, and asked your help to discover the murderer."
I do not know what you talk about.
"Every detail of this séance was planned. When he asked you the name, you were to tell him the name of a woman."
Inspector, I have never heard one word of this before.
"Not a word?"
Not a word.
Donahue taking paper out of the inside pocket of his coat, and reading aloud.
"What do you want? Answer. Don't forget the swimming pool. Don't ever forget the swimming pool. Do you mean the time he went in after me? When we were little boys? Spencer Lee says he can't rest." And so on, down to, "Do you know who killed you?"
He turns to the others.
The answer to that should have been yes. What did she say?
She didn't answer that question.
Donahue looks at paper again.
The next question is, can you tell the name? And then she was to have told that woman's name. Just the first name. Mrs. Crosby, what did she reply to that question?
She moaned and cried.
What did she say after that?
Nothing. She moaned again, and came out of the so-called trance.
Why didn't you do as you agreed?
I do not know what you talk about.
The police know that some woman killed Spencer Lee. Something was taken from the inside pocket of his coat. We think it was a package of letters. This woman left traces. We have her fingerprints, many of them. Eventually we'll find her. For 3 or 4 weeks, Mr. Wales has been working among the people who knew Lee. His theory was that this woman wanted to get back her letters. In fact, did get them back. He felt reasonably sure that he had found the woman, that one of you ladies here tonight is probably the woman we are hunting. He thought that he could play on her superstitious fears, and then when her name seemingly came from the spirit of the dead man, she would confess. He told Madame Lagrange the name, explained to her just what he wanted, and together he and I worked out the exact wording of the messages that were supposed to come from Spencer Lee's spirit."
He turns suddenly to Rosalie.
"You agreed to all this. Why didn't you speak the name?"
I do not know anything about it. He must have forgotten to tell it to me.
"Oh, no, he didn't."
There was no name. He did not tell me any name.
"My good woman, you mustn't take me for a fool. You agreed to use a certain name. You came here for that purpose, and then after you got here, something happened to make you change your plans. Something unexpected happened."
He stops for a moment, turns to Miss Eastwood.
"Miss Eastwood, what did you say was your first name?"
"Mary."
"And yours?"
"Elizabeth."
"Yours?"
"Grace."
"Mr. Crosby, your wife's name is?"
Alicia.
"Mrs. Trent?"
Helen.
"Miss O'Neill?"
Helen.
"Helen, I see. So there are 2 Helens. 2 Helens.
He stands looking first at one and then at the other of the 2 women.
"Mr. Crosby, When Madame Lagrange first came tonight, did she show any surprise at seeing any of the people here?
Not that I noticed.
Oh, yes, she did. Miss O'Neill wasn't in the room when she arrived. Later, when she came in, Madame Lagrange seemed upset. She said something to her that none of us could hear. Then I remember she argued with Mr. Wales and said she didn't feel like having a séance.
Now we're getting it. Everything was going along smoothly until Miss O'Neill came in. The extra Helen. Mr. Crosby, your daughter was in the room when Madame Lagrange came in?
Yes.
You noticed nothing unusual in this woman's manner?
I'd never seen her before.
I mean, she did nothing to attract your attention. The fact that Helen Trent was in the room made no impression on her?
Seemingly not.
Then Helen O'Neill came in.
Goes up to Helen, then crosses to Rosalie.
Rosalie Lagrange, what's that girl to you?
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all? Then why did you try to deceive me as to where she sat? Why did you place her so that I would not know she was sitting next to Mr. Wales when he was stabbed?
It was just my mistake. I did not do it on purpose.
I'm afraid that won't do. It's perfectly apparent that the name you were to speak was Helen. What's the use of lying to me? You've tried your best to shield this girl. I want to know why.
There is no reason. I never saw the young lady before in all my life.
What's that girl to you?
Nothing. Nothing at all.
Damn you, you old harridan! You come across!
Helen, springing forward and pushing Donahue.
Let my mother alone. Let my mother alone.
She goes to Rosalie, puts her arms around her. Rosalie weeps.
I thought perhaps I'd get it that way.
There, dear. It's all right. It's all right.
Of course it's all right. We've got the fingerprints and...
If you think for 1 minute I'm going to let you...
My boy, wait.
Grabbing him and pinning his arms to his sides.
Think what?
Think nothing.
He shakes himself free and goes to Donahue.
That's the girl I love, and I'll be damned if I'll let you take her fingerprints.
Young man, don't be a fool. I'm sorry, but it's too clear.
Rosalie, breaking away from her daughter and moving to Donahue.
Claire, how is it too clear? Inspector, you are never going to accuse my little girl of a thing like that.
She was next to him. She had only to free one hand and strike, and then take his hand again.
There was something else she had to do before she could even do that. She had to have murder in her heart.
Well?
Rosalie turns suddenly, seizes her daughter by the hand, turns her to him. Rosalie stays between Donahue and Helen.
Look at her. Look in her eyes. Look at the face of her. Is there murder there? Have you not eyes in your head?
Dunn enters.
It's not on either of them.
I know where it is. Tell the matron she'll find the knife on this girl.
Inspector, I will tell you anything I know. Only keep your hands off my little girl. I did come here like you said, and when I see my little girl I lose my head. I tried to save her, and I've made it worse. You've looked at her, the poor young thing that would not harm a fly, and you think she could do a thing like that?
Yes.
Rosalie, still crying bitterly.
Then, Inspector Donahue, you are a damn fool, and with God's help I will prove it.
Curtain. End of Act 2. Act 3 of The 13th Chair by Bayard Veiller. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Act 3. The same scene half an hour later.
Father of heaven, help me. My little girl is in terrible trouble, and there is not anyone to help her but me. She is a good girl. You know all things. You know she is a good girl. Show me the way. I have been a fakir all my life. I have tricked them and fooled them, but I have never meant to harm a soul. I have never done harm to a person. And there is a power. It has come to me before, a power that I could not understand. I felt it, and I showed it. Oh God, give it to me again. Do this for my little girl, for the sake of your son. Amen.
Turns and goes to the window. She pulls up the blind and raises the window. The light comes from the street lamp, showing a square patch of light on the ceiling. In the center of this patch Sticking point up in the heavy wooden paneling can be seen the knife. Donahue enters. He turns on the lights.
Who turned off the lights?
I did, sir.
Why?
I was praying.
Praying? What for?
Guidance.
I hope you get it.
I will, sir. I will. I will join the others now.
I think you'd better wait. Mike!
Dunn enters from left.
Yes, Inspector.
Did Madame Lagrange see you as she came in here?
No, sir. I followed your instructions and kept out of sight.
How long has she been here?
About 10 minutes.
Time enough for her to find what we couldn't.
I'll bet she's got it.
Take her to Mrs. Macpherson. She's not to go near anyone or speak to anyone. Tell Mrs. Mac to search her.
He turns to Rosalie.
Unless, of course, you want to give up that knife now.
I have not any knife, and I've been searched once.
Exactly. And then you were allowed to come back into this room. We were rather anxious to see what you found while you were in here. Well?
I have found nothing that would be any good to you.
I'm the best judge of that. What was it you found?
I found comfort, sir. A feeling that the innocent would come to no harm.
Take her to Mrs. Macpherson. Come back as soon as you turn her over to the matron.
Yes, Inspector. Come on, you.
I will come.
They go out. He stands looking after them for about 5 seconds, when Dunn re-enters.
Mrs. Max got her.
She turned out that light. I wonder why. What did she want in the dark?
He goes over toward the light switch and puts out his hand. He stops suddenly as his attention is attracted by a policeman coming feet foremost down the chimney. The policeman jumps down all the way in fireplace and comes into the room to console table left end of Chesterfield. His uniform is covered with soot, and so are his face and hands.
I sent him to see if they'd hidden that knife up there.
Good. Find anything?
Nothing but dirt. Who pays for this uniform?
You don't, anyway. Could you hear anything while you were up there?
Not a thing.
You are sure?
Certain.
Go and get a bath.
'Tain't Saturday.
He exits.
Don't it beat hell?
Why?
That knife couldn't have flew away.
We'll find it eventually. It's in this room somewhere.
No, sir, it ain't.
Where have you looked?
Everywhere.
Not hidden in the furniture?
I'll gamble it ain't. Took up all the rugs, shook them, dug through the upholstery in the furniture, looked back of mat on the wall. It's not in the bric-a-brac, or whatever these swells call their jugs.
Unless we find it on the old woman, it's still in this room.
I suppose you noticed that she opened the window?
Yes, I noticed that. Mike, you've got the makings of a great detective.
I'm a darned good detective now.
Donahue goes to window and calls out.
Say, Doolin, see anything?
A woman put up the window just now. She stood there a while looking up in the air. Watching the stars, I guess.
Have anything in her hand?
No, sir. The light from this lamp was shining right on her. I could see everything.
Throw anything out the window?
No, Inspector?
All right. You're to arrest anyone leaving the house.
I gotcha.
We'll find the knife eventually. We've got to. Get me Mr. Crosby, the O'Neill girl. That's the order I want to see them in here.
Dunn exits. Crosby enters.
Your man told me to come here.
Yes. Sorry to have to give orders in your house. If you don't like it, I can take everyone down to police headquarters. You know what will happen. What the newspapers will do if I take all these ladies and gentlemen downtown. In the end, this way will be the best for you and your friends. Well, how about it?
Thank you. I think you'd better regard this house as your own for the present.
All right. If you don't mind, I'll use this room for a headquarters for the present.
I've already told you to use this house as your own.
Thank you. Good evening.
Ha! I'm dismissed.
You're dismissed. Why did Wales object to the engagement of your son and Helen O'Neill?
Who told you that?
It doesn't matter. I know that he did. Why?
I can't talk about it.
All right. You're the best judge of that. Only I'm attaching a great deal of importance to this fact. If I'm unduly emphasizing its value, don't you think you'd better set me straight about it?
What possible bearing can it have on...
Motive, my dear sir. Motive.
Come on. You can't think that this girl killed Wales because she heard him ask us to wait before we sanctioned her engagement to my son.
She did hear Mr. Wales make that objection. That's just what I wanted to know.
I think I'd better send for my lawyer.
Well, you can do as you like about that. Frankly, I don't understand your attitude at all. I can appreciate your desire to spare your son all the unhappiness that you can, but if this young woman killed Wales and Lee, the sooner we find it out, the better for you and your family.
Oddly enough, I was thinking only of Miss O'Neill at the moment.
You'd better think of yourself and your family first.
That's for me to decide. I'm certainly not going to allow that child to be bullied and badgered in the usual police fashion.
You are going to do as you are told, sir. If you warn that girl, if you caution her in any way, I'll drag every one of you downtown. You, and your wife, and your son, and the girl, and all your friends. Be reasonable, Mr. Crosby. If the girl is innocent, telling me the truth won't hurt her. If she's guilty, and I think she is, by God, I'm going to drag the truth out of her and her mother. Come in.
Helen enters.
You wanted me?
Yes, come in. Sit down, please.
Indicating chair below table right.
Helen.
What you are planning to do, Mr. Crosby, will only make matters worse. I promised you that.
Crosby exits left and leaves door open. Donahue turns, closes door, and turns sharply to Helen.
Now then, young woman, let's hear what you've got to say.
Nothing.
Nothing. I don't suppose it's necessary for me to tell you that you're under grave suspicion.
No, I realize that.
Now, the best way to help yourself, if you're innocent, is to be quite frank with me. Well?
I've already told you that there is nothing I can say.
Someone has advised you not to answer me. Who was it? You'd better tell me.
I am not going to answer any of your questions.
I told you that if you were innocent, nothing that you could say would hurt you. If you're guilty, well, that's a different matter.
You know that I didn't do it.
Well, there you are. Why not answer my question, then? The sooner we find out who is guilty, the sooner you'll be freed from suspicion. You see that, don't you?
Yes.
Brings chair and sits in front of table.
Now we're getting along. How well did you know Spencer Lee? You'd better make up your mind to talk. Do you hear? Why, you little fool, do you think you can fight me?
He turns sharply to face her, turning his back on the door at left.
You were the last person to see Spencer Lee alive. Yes, and you saw him dead, too. You heard Wales threaten to tell these fine people what he knew about you. You knew he'd prevent your marriage to this young millionaire. And then...
Rosalie enters quietly from left, and stands for a moment watching them.
When your chance came in the dark, you killed him. Now then, you come across with the truth.
She'll come across with nothing.
Donahue rises and stands by table. Helen rises.
You said that she was the one who did it, and you would find the knife on her. Well, you did not, did you? You think that she is the person that killed Spencer Lee?
Yes.
Well, she is not. You say you have fingerprints of the girl who was in his room. Well, take her fingerprints and put them side by side with the others, and then you will see. I dare you to do that.
Mother!
What were you going to say?
Nothing.
Dunn enters with box and envelope.
That's very wise of you.
Got it, Inspector.
Do they compare?
To a T.
All right. Let me have 'em. Now ask Mr. Crosby and his son to come here at once.
Dunn turns and exits.
I already have your daughter's fingerprints, Madame Lagrange.
Have you really? You are very smart.
Helen crosses to Rosalie. Rosalie puts her arms about the girl and swings her left of her. When Donahue opens box at the back of table, Crosby and William enter from left, accompanied by Dunn.
That's all, Mike.
Dunn exits left and closes door.
Mr. Crosby, I told you that I'd settle this case in a few minutes. The time has come sooner than I thought. I am now ready to make an arrest. I have sent for you and your son because...
He suddenly turns toward Helen.
This is the woman we have been hunting.
That is a lie!
William goes to Helen.
Here is the cup, which we took from Spencer Lee's rooms. These are the fingerprints of the woman who used it. Here is the saucer that she used. More fingerprints. A few minutes ago, I sent this young woman a note. The man who gave it to her wore gloves. So did I when I addressed the envelope. Hers are the only naked hands that have touched it."
He picks up the envelope gingerly by one corner and holds it outward to them.
"They are unquestionably Helen O'Neill's fingerprints."
Donahue puts down the envelope. Then he picks up the cup and points to the finger marks on it.
"And so, Mr. Crosby, are these. There can be no doubt about it. There is never any doubt about this method of identification. In 20 years there has never been one mistake. We now have what we've been hunting for, the woman who went to Spencer Lee's rooms."
Look at me, my darling. Look at your mother.
She takes Helen's face in her hands and looks at her closely.
Huh. Now, darling, you must not be frightened. Look up, child. Why do you not say anything?
I can't.
What can she say?
Dear, tell him it's a lie.
Wait, let me talk to her. My dear, you understand that none of us believe what the inspector wants us to believe. We know that you have never done anything, that you are no more guilty of this atrocious crime than I am. We all want to help you. We believe in you and trust you and love you. You understand that, don't you?
Yes.
I won't have this.
I'm afraid you must, Will.
He turns again to Helen.
We want to help you, so, my dear, you must be perfectly frank with us. Inspector Donahue says he can prove that you went into that man's rooms. Is that true?
Yes.
And what if she did? She had a good errand? What did you go for, darling?
I can't tell you.
Dear, you must tell us.
She looks at him suddenly. He comes over and kneels beside her and talks to her as if to a little child.
My dear, it isn't that we don't trust you. Surely you know how we all love you. But we must know the truth. Because we have to show him how wrong he is.
Yes, and I'm waiting to be shown.
Why did you go to Spencer Lee?
You mustn't ask me that. I can't tell you.
But if you don't tell us, how can we help you?
I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything.
We know that, my child. But why did you go? Did you know Spencer Lee?
Of course she didn't.
Why don't she speak for herself?
Because I'll speak for her.
Can't you even answer that question?
Helen shakes her head and makes a despairing gesture.
But, dear, don't you see what they'll think? Helen, you must tell me.
Could I speak to Mother alone?
You cannot.
Where is the harm in that? A child has the right to talk to her own mother any time she does want.
Anything you wish to say, you can say in front of me.
Darling, you need not mind the nice inspector. I well know that there was never anything on your mind that you could not say before all the world. Tell your mother, my darling.
I can't.
Stop. There has been crying enough. I did lose my head through that. Stop crying or I will beat you.
She too begins to cry and takes her daughter in her arms again.
There, my dear. Your mother is not going to let anyone hurt you. Not anyone at all.
They cry together for a moment, and then Rosalie gets her self-control back.
We will both be the better for that. Now then, tell me.
Mother, I can't.
Who did you promise you would not?
Why, how did you?
She is shielding someone.
No.
That is the first lie you have ever told me. I want to know who it is you are shielding. She is your girl.
Yes.
Then make her tell.
Nell, dear, you must.
Billy, I can't.
My dear, even if you're protecting someone else, I think you ought to tell us.
Why are you all against me? Why are you all trying to make me break my...
Break your word. You shall not. You need not tell. I know it myself now. I have been blind. You are the one that found out there was 2 Helens? 2 extra Helen, you said. Well, please to send for the other Helen and ask her.
Mother, stop.
Stop. I will not.
Wait, please. Is it my daughter you're protecting? Because if it is, much as we love her, my dear, we can't accept that sacrifice from you. I'm her father, and you must tell me the truth. Did my daughter send you? Did you go for my daughter?
Yes.
I did know it.
My daughter sent you? What for?
Some letters.
Why didn't she go herself?
She was afraid.
Well, go on.
Tell him, dear. It's all right.
I don't know what to say.
Why not tell the truth?
Tell the inspector what happened, dearie.
Nothing happened. That's the funny part of it. The minute Mr. Lee understood that I knew about the letters, everything was changed. I said that unless he gave them to me, I'd tell Mr. Crosby about them. He seemed terribly upset. He said he hadn't meant to frighten Helen, that he loved her and was desperate. I thought it was a funny kind of love, but I didn't tell him that. Then he gave me the letters.
Was this before or after you had tea with him?
Before.
Go on. He gave you the letters?
Yes, and he seemed terribly unhappy. He begged me to stay and talk to him for a few minutes, and I did. He asked me to have some tea with him, and I did that too.
How charming. What did you do after tea?
I came home and gave Helen her letters.
And that's all?
That's all.
Why did you do this?
She's Billy's sister.
My compliments, young woman. That was beautifully done. And she looked so innocent, too.
You don't believe.
Not a word of it. Not one word.
And why not?
That I don't is sufficient. Her story is preposterous. Your daughters...
It is the truth.
Do you expect me to believe for a minute that a man like Lee would threaten your daughter, and then, when a total stranger comes to him and asks for the letters, give them up without a word? Why, no jury in the world would believe your story.
Jury? You're not going to arrest her.
She is arrested.
You have no proof.
All the proof that I need. If she was innocent, why didn't she tell me all this when I first questioned her? Why did she wait until she knew that I had proof, that she had been in Spencer Lee's room?
She was protecting my sister.
Women don't hang together like that.
Oh, they do. They do. The poor creatures.
They do not. I know them. She wasn't protecting your sister. She was protecting herself. She went for the letters, of course, and they had tea before she asked for them, not afterwards.
How do you know that?
She couldn't take tea with a man she just killed.
Why, damn you!
Crosby, grabbing William by shoulders.
Billy!
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to lose my temper. I suppose we've got to take this thing calmly. Inspector, you honestly believe that Nellie killed this man?
Yes.
Why should she?
She was engaged to you. He had compromising letters she had written to him. He was threatening her with exposure. She went to get her letters. They had tea together. She's admitted that, after we proved it. And then, when he wouldn't give up her letters, she killed him. So much for the first murder. Now for the second. She was sitting next to Wales. He had already threatened her with exposure. In another minute the medium would have told her name as that of the person who had been in Spencer Lee's rooms. She pulled her hand away from his, struck, and took his hand again. Young man, you'll have a hard time tearing apart that chain of evidence.
Except for the fact that she did never write the man a letter in her life. It is a grand case you have, Inspector.
Of course. Dad, we've lost our brains. She didn't go for her own letters. You were talking of juries. Do you think any jury would believe that a young girl would kill a man to get back another woman's letters for her?
He starts toward door.
Where are you going?
To get my sister.
Wait.
William stops.
I'll send for Mrs. Trent.
But I want to ask her.
I'll ask my own questions. If you want to help this investigation, you might call Sergeant Dunn for me.
William opens door.
Sergeant Dunn, the inspector wants you.
Dunn enters.
Ask Mrs. Trent to come here.
Dunn exits. Mrs. Trent and Trent enter from left, followed by Dunn.
I sent for Mrs. Trent.
I know that. What do you want to see her about?
Mrs. Trent, did you ask this girl to go to Spencer Lee's rooms to get letters you had written to him?
Did she what?
Did you, Mrs. Trent?
Certainly not.
Why?
Keep still, you.
To Mrs. Trent.
Are you sure?
Of course she's sure.
Mr. Trent, you must stop these interruptions.
To Mrs. Trent.
Will you please answer my question?
I never wrote a letter to Spencer Lee in my life. How dare you say I sent you there?
You did. You did.
I don't know what she's told you, Inspector, but...
Never mind what you told me. I want to be very sure of this. You did not ask this girl to go to Spencer Lee's rooms?
No.
He had no letters of yours?
No.
Did you know whether this girl had written to him?
I don't know anything about it.
But Nell didn't know Lee, and you did, Helen.
How about that, Mrs. Trent?
I hadn't seen Mr. Lee for 2 or 3 years. He used to come here a good deal. He wanted to marry me, but I didn't like him. And I certainly never wrote him letters of any sort. That is all I can tell you.
Thank you very much. That is all that I want to know.
You're lying to save yourself. You've got to tell the truth.
She is telling the truth.
She's not.
I'm sorry, Billy.
Father, you know that.
Yes, dear, I know. Inspector, do you want us any more?
Not any more, thank you.
Come then, children.
He exits with Mr. and Mrs. Trent.
Mike, take her downtown.
I would not if I was you. Inspector, I do know who has done it.
You know? Who was it?
I cannot tell you yet. But I will. I will.
Telling's not enough. There's just one thing that will convince me that she didn't kill Spencer Lee.
What, Inspector, what?
The confession of the one who did. Bring me that, and I'll set your daughter free.
Inspector, give me a chance. Do not arrest my little girl. Give me time. I do know who has done it, and I will get for you what you want.
Nonsense.
Give me 1 hour, sir. Keep them all here 1 hour more.
No.
Give her a chance. We are all here. No one will get away. What difference will a few minutes make?
Donahue takes out his watch and looks at it.
I'll give her 10 minutes. Mike, tell Doolin again to arrest anyone trying to leave the house, and get on the front door yourself and stay there until I tell you.
Dunn turns and exits.
You've got just 10 minutes.
He follows Dunn off.
10 minutes. 10 minutes.
Why didn't you tell who did it?
How could I? I have no idea in the world, but I am going to find out. I am going to find out.
But how, Mother, how?
Call them back. Make them all come too. I want them all.
Helen runs off left.
Sir, run down in the hall. Do you know which is Mr. Wilde's overcoat?
Yes, I think so.
See if you can find me a glove or something of it. And hurry, mon Dieu, hurry.
William runs off left. Rosalie stands in thought for a moment. Then she places a chair center facing upstage. William runs on again and hands her a glove.
Did you get it?
What are you going to do?
Trick them. Lie to them. It is for Nelly. Do you blame me?
What can I do to help?
You are a man after my own heart. I am going to do something to put the fear of God into the heart of that murderer. Do not pay any attention to me. Watch them. Do not look at me. Do not take your eyes off them. I am looking for one of them to do something that will show us the way. It is our only chance.
Helen runs in left.
They're coming.
Leave the door open so we can hear them. Child, kiss me for luck.
They kiss.
It will do no harm to kiss him too.
They kiss.
Now, my boy, can you lie?
Can I?
I am going into a trance. When they do come into the room, you will tell them that I asked for Mr. Wales' glove, and the minute I have it in my hand, I went off like they see me. Tell me you thought there might be some reason for it, and then leave the rest to me.
She sits in the chair center, facing the back of the stage.
I understand.
You stand here at the back of me. I wish for them all to be in front of me. Nelly, stand close by me.
To William.
Go farther back.
Helen moves to right of Rosalie.
That's right. Now don't you move from there. This will be the realest trance and the grandest fake. When I come out, make them go away. Tell them you are afraid and that it will kill me to see anyone.
She suddenly stiffens in her chair, lying rigid with her head thrown back on the headrest, and the hand in which she is holding Wales's glove stretched out straight in front of her. Enter Crosby, Miss Eastwood, Standish, Trent, Mrs. Crosby, Mrs. Trent, Miss Erskine, and Miss Standish.
What is it, Billy?
What's happened?
I don't know exactly. We were talking about this awful thing. She knew, of course, that her daughter couldn't have done it, and she asked me to get her something that had belonged to poor Wales. I got a glove out of Wales' overcoat pocket and handed it to her, and then all of a sudden she went stiff like that. I don't know what it means.
The others draw closer to Rosalie. Miss Eastwood comes to Rosalie and lays her hand on her forehead.
She's like ice. She's not...
Oh, no, it's a trance.
Mason enters.
I wouldn't touch her if I were you.
Hello, everybody. What are you all so solemn about? I've got a message from a new friend. He do not want me to send it. He wants to talk. He thinks he can talk, and he's only been there a little while. He says you're all fools. It's so plain, so plain. He's looking right at the one who did it, right straight at the one who did it.
I'm coming to you until you tell. I can't speak names. You've got to tell. I'm coming. Again and again and again until you tell. Find the knife. You must find the knife. The marks will show. The marks will show.
Miss Eastwood shrieks and faints. Mrs. Crosby goes to Miss Eastwood.
This has got to stop.
Starts to move to Rosalie's chair.
You mustn't touch her.
It's all right as far as the men are concerned, but look at that girl.
He points to Miss Eastwood.
They'll all be fainting if this isn't stopped.
Trent goes to Rosalie.
Trent, let the medium alone. Do you understand? Let the medium alone.
That's Wales's voice. But Wales is dead.
Mason goes slowly to Rosalie's chair. Rosalie begins to mutter and moan. Suddenly, she brings her hands together and then throws her arms wide apart. Wales's glove sails out of her hand and strikes Mason on the face. It falls to the floor. Standish exits very quietly, door down left. Mason picks glove up, holding it in his hand, looks at it, suddenly drops it on the floor, turns to Mrs. Crosby.
Mrs. Crosby, shall I take Miss Eastwood to your room for you?
Suppose I set the others a good example.
Miss Erskine moves to door left. Mason assists Miss Eastwood and helps her from the room, exiting door down left. Mrs. Crosby goes out left. Trent wipes his hands with handkerchief. Rosalie stirs uneasily and moans.
Please leave her to me. I'm afraid seeing you all here will trouble her. I'm afraid she'll... Oh, won't you please go?
The others turn, move towards the door down left, and go out.
Let me know if there's anything I can do.
Yes, only please go now.
Crosby goes out left. William runs quickly to the door at left, closes it, and then turns to Rosalie, who is sitting up in her chair.
Well?
It was the Eastwood girl. Her face was terrible. I was glad when she fainted.
I think you're wrong. Standish ran away. He couldn't bear it.
And that is all you saw? I told you to use your eyes and the brains that are in the back of them.
Well, of course there was Trent. You can't mean Trent. Why, he's the kindest man in the world. The letters. If he's known the truth about the letters.
Coming down to Rosalie's chair and picking up glove.
Mother, why did you throw that glove at Mason?
Did it hit him? Well. Well, anyhow, it was a good seance.
Mother, you know? You found out?
It is one thing to know and another to prove.
Mother, who was it?
Child, do you think it is a game we do play? I have 2 or 3 minutes. What I have to do quickly.
But what, Mother, what?
I do not know. Child, if you do not get away from me, you will drive me mad.
But can't we?
This is no work for children. Leave me alone and let me think.
William and Helen run off left, closing door.
He will never tell in the world. Never in all this world. Laughing eyes, you are no good to me in the world. We have faked all our lives, and now when I want a real thing, I get nothing at all. If I could find a knife, there would be marks of an hand on that. But it is gone. It is gone. I cannot let him get away. I want a sign. Laughing eyes, are we going to be beaten by a scheming, cold-hearted murder?
Rosalie starts and looks hastily around the room.
I did not do that. I did not do that.
She lifts her skirt and sees that her feet are still in her shoes.
It is come. After all the years, a real message. A real message. I will have it in the dark, believing and trusting that I am to be shown.
She crosses down to door left and switches off the light. All the lights in the room are out. The spot from the window shines on the ceiling, brilliantly illuminating the knife.
Laughing eyes, have you a message for me?
She looks up at knife in ceiling.
Look at it. The knife.
The door at left opens. Pollock stands in the doorway. He sees that the lights are out and turns them on. Then he sees Rosalie, who is standing center, facing front, as in a trance.
Excuse me, madam. I knocked twice, but you didn't hear me.
I heard you. Just the same, it was a message.
The inspector says, have you got anything you want to tell him?
Rosalie stands lost in thought. Pollock looks at her for a moment, and then nervously begins to place the chair below table. He notices that the window blind is up, goes over and pulls it down and draws the curtains. He then comes back to Rosalie.
The inspector says, have you got anything you want to tell him?
Donahue enters.
Time's about up. Well?
I want them all here. All of them. Everyone.
What for?
You are going to hear the murderer confess.
Pollock, ask Mr. Crosby to bring everyone here.
Very good, sir.
He exits left. Donahue takes out his watch and stands with it in his hand, watching Rosalie. She stands lost in her dreams. Dunn enters with Helen O'Neill, down left.
Here she is, Inspector.
Come here, miss. Go and get a taxi.
Dunn turns and exits. The others enter and stand crowding in the doorway. William pushes through and crosses and stands by Helen.
What is it? You sent for us.
She says her daughter's not guilty. I gave her 10 minutes to find out who is. The time's up.
He puts his watch back in his pocket. He turns to Rosalie.
Well?
Rosalie stands rigid.
You that is hiding, come out.
Come on.
You that is skulking, come out. I call on the spirit of Edward Wales. I call on the spirit of Edward Wales. Now, you that's killed 2 men, look.
The door at left of fireplace slowly swings open. Mason, with a cry of horror, pushes through the crowd at the doorway, which parts to let him through. He follows the spirit he sees moving across the stage until he is center and a little above the table. All watch Mason. Suddenly, the window curtains are thrown back, the blind runs up noisily, and the lights go down. The street light strikes the knife in the ceiling as it begins to fall. Mason's eye follows the light. He sees the knife and gives a cry of horror as it strikes the table and sticks in front of him. Mason rushes up stage, end of table right.
I can't fight the dead! I can't fight the dead!
Slowly, Rosalie points at him. The others stand and stare.
Go on. Tell it.
I had to do it. I was afraid Mr. Wales would know.
You did kill them both?
Yes.
Mr. Wales to prevent him finding out about Spencer Lee?
Yes.
And Spencer Lee?
He ought to have been killed. I've been waiting for years to kill him.
Why?
That's between him and me. He smashed my life, and by God, I got him. He knows why I killed him. I told him I would. I'm glad I did. I only wish I could have done it over and over again. That's all.
Why did you kill Spencer Lee?
He took her away from me. She was the one thing in the world, and he took her away from me. I went to Paris to forget, and all I could do was to remember. Then she died, and I made up my mind that he must die too.
How did you get the knife in the ceiling?
I threw it, just as I threw a knife into Spencer Lee's back. I stood in the doorway of his room, and I told him I'd come to kill him. And he ran for his revolver, and as he ran, I threw the knife into his back. Then I picked up my knife and walked away. No one saw me. I was quite safe. Quite safe till she came. and unseen hands pushed me forward. Unseen hands have pointed the way. She's not a human. Lee's message came through her. You all heard Wales speak. Out of her lips we heard Wales' voice. He said he'd come back again and again and again, and then he came. I saw him as he came through the door. God Almighty, you can't fight the dead.
He turns suddenly and walks to door left. As he opens it, Sergeant Dunn steps into the room.
That's your man, Sergeant.
Dunn, putting his hand on Mason's arm.
You got him?
Yes, I got him.
Great work, Chief. Great work.
He takes Mason off down left.
The poor young man. The poor young man.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are all quite at liberty.
Thank you, Inspector, for your consideration.
Not at all. It was the best way out of it.
Inspector!
Yes?
My congratulations.
He looks at her for a moment, then turns back and shakes hands with her.
You were quite right about me. I was a damn fool.
He exits. Mrs. Trent turning to her father.
Oh, Daddy, Daddy, I lied about her. I lied about her.
Crosby takes her in his arms. Helen crosses to Rosalie.
There is nothing but happiness coming to you. The spirits tell me you are a favorite child of fortune. You will have wealth and prosperity and happiness. You will marry the man you love, and you will be happy.
The curtain falls. End of Act 3. End of The 13th Chair by Bayard Veiller.